Why this hairdo? Why walk the town, my dear, swinging a skirt of silken gossamer? Why drench your hair with Syrian scent, and try to sell yourself in foreign finery? While shop-bought fashion spoiling nature's line allows your own fair form no chance to shine. Such doctoring, take my word, is all in vain. Love wears no clothes and likes his beauty plain. Look, earth brings forth her colours and is fair, and ivies flourish best without our care. In lonely caves the loveliest arbutes grow, and without teaching brooks know how to flow. The native pebbles paint the beach most bright, and birds untrained to sing give most delight. Through life your gifts of mind will please me best, then think it dull to be thus overdressed. Now, those are words from a poem called Truth is Beauty by a Roman called Propertius. And I thought that they would make a good springboard for what I want to talk to you about today. And hello, by the way, I have been away for a while. I haven't been recording videos, but sorry to interrupt your peace and quiet, because here I am again. I thought I'd do something. I want to talk to you today about beauty. And I suppose I want to criticise beauty, although not actually. I don't actually want to criticise beauty, because that would be a stupid thing to do. I want to criticise what we define as beauty, and I think we've got the definition badly wrong. And this has more or less come about. The reason I want to do this is because I've seen an increasing amount of stuff about this. I suppose you would call it the cult of beauty, or the cult of looking good. This is what people refer to as looksmaxing. I don't really like the word, if I'll be honest with you. It doesn't feel right on the tongue. It's not a proper word, you know, or these modern whatever, anything maxing, it's not a real word. It's just, it doesn't sit right on the tongue. But anyway, that's what it is. So we'll use our plain speech, because otherwise I won't be able to explain myself properly. Looksmaxing. And to a lesser extent, I suppose, you've got all the stuff that came before, because I feel like looksmaxing's only really popped up recently, the kind of extreme looksmaxing. But if you want to talk about looksmaxing just as an idea that you should try and look as attractive as possible, then I suppose you could say that looksmaxing has been going on for years, and we've only now given it a label, and that actually the more extreme stuff that people are doing now, you know, these bone smashing, I think, is where you hit yourself with a hammer or whatever, and that's supposed to make your jawline stiffer or what, I don't know. What good's a stiff jawline? No, but the point is, I think that the extreme stuff that we would call looksmaxing is in actual fact just a sort of extension of the eternal looksmaxing, which has been going on forever and has only recently been given the label. So I mean, I would argue makeup sort of falls in the same, or cosmetics, if we want to speak more broadly, plastic surgery, all this sort of thing. It all falls under looksmaxing. And of course, it becomes more extreme. You know, this putting on lipstick is not quite the same as having an operation on your nose. They're different. You know, I felt nasal pain when I said operation on nose. And anyway, they are the same thing, but they're different degrees of the same thing. And I want to criticise that, as it were. Now it's when I was developing this opinion around makeup, I do feel some trepidation criticising it, because obviously it's mostly women who wear makeup. At least most of the women I know are the ones who are wearing makeup, as opposed to most of the men I know. And I do feel some trepidation at this, sort of coming from a feminist angle, if you will. You know, this is what a feminist looks like. And so I feel some trepidation, because I can hear the feminists say, when I criticise makeup, I can hear them saying, well, it's about women's empowerment, you know, it's about what we want to do. And are you criticising what we want to do? Are you criticising our individual liberty? And no. But what I mean, to me, it's almost as if, you know, women went around whipping themselves. And I think it would not be wrong of me to say that I don't think that anybody, woman or not, should be going around whipping themselves. I don't think it's a good thing to be self-flagellating all the time. Because I think it's doing you more harm than good, whether you believe it is doing you good or whether you believe that you are doing it for noble reasons. That does not detract from the nobility of the reason, but you can be mistaken. And I think that women are badly mistaken here in confusing makeup for empowerment and considering and confusing it for individuality and expression. I think it's actually just self-torment, but very well masked self-torment. So I suppose I'd like you to keep that in mind, is that this is not meant this is not meant as a criticism of ideals per se, or of certain kinds of ideals, but this is meant as a criticism of practice. However, there are also ideals I want to criticise, but they're different ideals. They're tangentially related. Anyway, I went off on rather a tangent there, but you may take my point here. From this point, you may have guessed that I don't much care for looksmaxing or cosmetics or any of that sort of thing. I mean, you can tell. But yes, so looksmaxing and makeup and cosmetics and plastic surgery and things, these are all efforts. The whole looksmaxing umbrella, everything under that umbrella, is designed with the aim of making man, that is humankind, making man look more beautiful. But what I would like to ask is, what does that make us think about beauty, right? So let's contrast a looksmaxer, say, with myself, and let's consider, okay, so if he is doing his efforts to become more beautiful and I'm not, and therefore he is more beautiful than me because he is, you know, employing all these techniques. He's got the mathematical charts out and whatever, and he's measuring his zygote projection. I don't know what a zygote projection is, but it was one of the funnier things I picked up when this whole thing was being explained to me. I think, is it PSL? There's some kind of mathematical way that you can rank a face to determine if a face is attractive or not. But yes, anyway, so let's contrast myself and the looksmaxer. What does that make us conclude about beauty? Well, that makes us conclude that beauty is something unnatural, that in fact beauty is a defiance of nature, because I am playing the hand I was dealt, right? I've not dyed my hair, I've not, had any rhinoplasty or, smashed my face with a hammer or worn any makeup to disguise the colour of my skin or the colour of my lips or, enhanced my eyebrows or anything like that. I haven't done any of that. I look more like what I am. I look more like the biological being which I inhabit, right? Whereas this looksmaxing fellow here next to me, he's doing all sorts of things to distance himself from that biological entity which he is. He's trying to make himself look less natural. And so what we are saying there is that nature is ugly, and that this ideal that we have constructed, that this man-made ideal of beauty, is what's really beautiful. Now, I take grave issue with this, and I think John Ruskin would take great issue with this as well. I've been reading a lot of John Ruskin, and so though I won't do a video on John Ruskin, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you can, there's a lot of people who can do a biographical video about a particular individual a lot better than me. So, but while I won't do a video on John Ruskin, I'll be mentioning him frequently perhaps in videos to come, because I've been reading a lot of him, and I think his philosophy is worthy of considering and has a lot of truth in it. But yes, John Ruskin would agree with me here in the truth. The idea of looksmaxing, right? This idea of beautifying as being a departure from nature is a wholeheartedly flawed system, because that imagines that nature is an ugly thing, that nature is to be shunned and to be concealed and to be built on top of to create what we actually want, which is this perfect mathematically symmetrical whatever of a face. Now, I would argue that in actual fact, in our estimations of beauty, we must always be firmly grounded in the truth. I argue the exact opposite. And that is that truth is the most valuable thing when we discuss beauty. But why? Why do we have to be so grounded in truth? Well, we are humans, right? We are men, humans, and we are limited. We are imperfect creatures, right? And when I say limited and imperfect, I use them as fairly synonymous, because if you can imagine the perfect thing has no faults. It is unlimited. It is whole. Whereas the limited thing is the imperfect thing. I see these as very conjoined ideas. So saying man is imperfect, saying man is limited, that means the same thing to me. And now you know what I mean when I say that. And yes, so humanity is in its very essence a limited idea. It is the idea of humanity is a limited thing. It is a thing that is not perfect. And so any acceptance of humanity has to be an acceptance of our limits, has to be an acceptance of the fact that we are not this perfect mathematical creation. We are an imperfect being that isn't entirely symmetrical, and doesn't live up to this ideal that has been fostered. the trouble with the idealism, if you hold this ideal about beauty, right, if you say that it's all about the perfect structure of the face and whatnot, in fact this applies to any idealism, is that we live in the real world, where humans are real biological creatures that aren't always like that perfect, symmetrical, whatever. And so your idealism will always, it's built on quicksand. It's always going to cave in, because you don't live in your ideal world. You don't live in the world where your ideal is the reality. You live in this world where reality is the reality. And so that is why I would argue that it is, as Propertius says, that truth is beauty. We must find beauty in truth. And so, well, I'm not going to, and obviously by this reasoning, I must be incredibly attractive. That's not the point I want to make, but I will make a few points based on myself, right? Is you may notice that I've got sideboards, and I call them sideboards by design. A lot of people say, no, you mean sideburns. I don't. They were traditionally called sideboards, and then there was a chap in the American Civil War, general called Ambrose Burnside, who had very large sideboards, and then after him, they started being called sideburns. No, so I call them sideboards. You will have noticed that I've got sort of attempts at sideboards. They're nothing at all like the gargantuan Victorian creations that I would, that I wouldn't mind having. But yes, you may have noticed that this one is considerably longer than this one. And that used to bother me a bit, because I thought, well, they should be even, surely. But then I remembered, no, hang on, you're a human, and humans don't control how much hair grows out of them. You can control the length of that hair, yes, and you can get rid of it altogether if you don't like it, but I like my sideboards, and the fact that they're uneven doesn't bother me anymore, because I'm an imperfect human. What control do I have over the fact they're uneven? Yes, I could keep shaving this one down to stay on par with this one, but why go through all the effort when it is my human nature that really matters? And you may have noticed I got my braces removed. I had braces on for about a year and a half, I want to say, maybe less, I don't know. It felt like eternity. Anyway, when I went into the orthodontist to have them taken off, that was a week ago today, actually, the lady said to me, are you excited to get them off? I said, no, I never cared what they looked like. And this took her aback significantly, because I suppose she's been so used in her profession to people saying how much their wonky teeth upset them, and how much they will be glad to have straight teeth. And, isn't this smile beautiful? Isn't this... I mean, I take no issue with it, and I had the braces, of course, but I had them for medical reasons. I was firmly against them at first, because I was so unbothered by my wonky teeth. I was thinking, why should I go through all this effort just to have straight teeth when I don't want straight teeth particularly? But then it was brought home to me that they had a medical application as well, and then that shifted the logic in that, okay, well, why would I go through all this effort to protest against something that is going to be medically good for me and will prevent pain just because I don't care about my wonky teeth? That is vanity taking place over medicine, which is the opposite of what I was originally doing. But yes, I had a conversation with my grandfather, and he obviously was born in a time in which this kind of gratis medical care, this gratis dental care, was not afforded to people, and so he's had several problems with his teeth in later life. And I just thought, how prideful would it be of me to stand up in a world where I am given free dental care of this kind, which can help prevent a lot of pain and suffering, and say no when there are people who've come before me who would have killed for that sort of thing and were not afforded it. So that was what convinced me to get them. Anyway, I got them, and now they're off. But yes, no, I don't much care about my teeth. And my mother said to me afterwards, oh, are you going to start smiling with your teeth out now? Will you take pictures? No, I'm not. I'm going to keep taking pictures looking like this, or this, because why should it matter? Why should it matter that I've got straight teeth now? It shouldn't, because that's just, it's an aesthetic thing. It doesn't matter that much, and I feel like people are so bound up with aesthetics. I didn't hide my wonky teeth because I was ashamed of them. Is the point I want to make there? I hid my wonky teeth because I don't like showing my teeth in photos. It's really that's what you want to look like. No, it just seems ridiculous to me. It should be much more dignified, stern, pensive, and noble, and all that sort of thing. Anyway, so that's another point, and then a further point is you may have noticed my hair, and to some what might be called facial hair, but might also just be called, it hardly justifies being called facial hair, is what I want to say. I haven't been shaving or cutting my hair for a while now, in fact, and I've decided that I won't do so until I get my A-level results. And this is an effort of demonstrating Roman mourning. Now, I have been showering. The Romans might not have been showering if they were in proper mourning, but essentially the Romans, when they were in mourning, they used to not shave their face or cut their hair. And so I am in mourning for my lost future, because I'm absolutely certain I'm going to do dreadful in my A-levels. I'm not absolutely certain I'm going to do dreadful, but it's a point about sort of, plan for the worst, hope for the best, accept the results. That's kind of what, Anyway, that's the point. And people, well, one particular bloke at work keeps telling me, you should shave your face. You look appalling. What is this? What is this? It looks dreadful. And I agree with him. Yes, it does look dreadful. And as soon as I can, I'll be rid of it. I'll be rid of this ridiculous, poor imitation of a moustache. I will be rid of them as soon as I can. But the point is, I don't mind looking ugly. It doesn't bother me. Because I think about these things differently to the way that he thinks about them. Clearly, he's clearly much more on board with the looksmaxers and the idea that beauty is an attainable perfection that you can get to by altering yourself. And I'm not that bothered by that definition of beauty, by that cult of beauty. I'm interested in humanity. Yes, I went on for a little bit there. Another point I would say is I have unwillingly, well, I say unwillingly, I did sort of enjoy it in a way, because I live with my mother and my mother watches Married at First Sight. I've ended up watching quite a lot of Married at First Sight. Anyway, there is and my friend is in the same boat. This one particular friend of mine, he's in the same boat. He's ended up watching a lot of it as well, and it's that in the way that when you've got younger relatives or whatever, and they're watching Peppa Pig, and then they go to do something else, and you're still sat in the room and Peppa Pig's on, and you sort of, why am I watching this? Why is this good? It's that sort of thing. But yeah, so I've ended up watching a bit of Married at First Sight, and one of the first things that they always do with these new couples is they give them photographs of everybody else who's in this experiment. They call them an experiment. I'm pretty sure you've reached your conclusion by now, guys. You don't need to keep doing it. It's for the money. This experiment that they're doing with these people, even though they know it never really works, except in certain fringe cases, that it results in disaster most of the time. Whatever. In this experiment, one of the first experiments they do is they give these couples photographs of everybody else in the experiment and say, will you rank them in order of attractiveness? And naturally, the ones that rank the person whom they have happened, the person with whom they have happened to match. There we go. Let's not end on our prepositions. They always end up, if they rank them first and then things happen, or things go well, or they don't rank them first and then the other person goes, well, maybe I won't rank you first then. And they're always very shallow about this. And I mentioned this to my friend. I said, well, how likely is it realistically that the person you get put with is the person that you think is the most attractive out of the lot of them? How realistic do we think that is? And he said, yeah, exactly, that's the point. That's why they do the challenge, is because of emotionally unintelligent people like you, emotionally illiterate people who don't realise that you just have to, whether you believe it or not, you have to put your partner at the top. That's the emotionally literate thing to do, and you're just being daft. Obviously, that's what you do, even if you don't believe it. Well, that's lying, and I would argue lying is not a good thing. But anyway, I'm going to say that no, it's not emotionally intelligent. There is an emotional point that can be made there, even if not in that specific circumstance. So let us imagine, right, that one is married, and let us imagine that one finds one's spouse to be not the most attractive person in the world, and one would admit that. One would say that there are other women out there in the world who are much more attractive than your spouse, right? What does that tell you? Well, that tells you that you are married to the person to whom you are married for them, for their individuality, for their personhood, not because of what they looked like. Because if you did value someone purely because they were incredibly attractive, well, that doesn't tell you a lot about the personhood. That doesn't tell you that you're with them because of their personhood. That tells you that you like your aesthetics. You may as well marry a cathedral if that's what you're going for. If you're just going for aesthetic beauty, then marry a cathedral. You're marrying somebody because you want to have a personal, a human connection. And and let us imagine then that for example, my spouse, I said to my spouse, look, you're not the most attractive person in the world. Well, that surely endears me to them even more, because I am still married to you, even though you are not the most attractive person in the world. Or I'm using these hyperbolic terms. Obviously, no one's really going to be, married to the most attractive person in the world, in that such a thing exists. It doesn't, whatever. But let us imagine you're not the most attractive person I know, which is entirely likely. I'm still married to you because I like your person, your personality. I like you as a human. And so that surely, even though you are not attractive, I still want to be with you. That conquest of unattractiveness, that is surely more endearing. That is surely more romantic in a way. But I get the sense that anyone would have trouble explaining that, because we're so obsessed with the cult of beauty. And this is sort of why I'm doing this video, is I want to try and get my case out there that the cult of beauty is not helpful. To build more on the idea of personal connections, is that in a person, it is their humanity that should be the object of our affections, not what they look like. It is their humanity, right? Because as I say, if you just like beautiful things, go and get a job in a cathedral, go and volunteer at York Minster, because that's a very beautiful thing. But and even if it's a particular feminine beauty or whatever, get a statue, get a marble statue or whatever. But no, it's you're not just after the beauty, you are after, and also a marble statue won't, age. What you are after is a human connection. What you are after is the fusion of two humans, right? And if you are attracted to the person, not their body, the person, right? The humanity of that person, then the sort of the physicality that personhood creates, right? In the sense that my personhood results in uneven sideboards and a bit of scruff here and hair that looks ridiculous and whatever. If you really like that person, then you should appreciate what that personhood creates in the physical form. And that is, I suppose, my concluding message. That's all I had written in my notes. So that is all I have to say on beauty for the moment. So I hope you found that helpful, or at least enlightening. I would be very grateful to hear your counter arguments to this, though I doubt anybody shall have the wherewithal or be bothered to do anything. But anyway, that is what I had to say. Thank you very much, and goodbye. One more point that I forgot to mention actually is how disgusting I find the arguments in favour of my opposition, right? For example, at the orthodontist where I go, they have this poster. I'll take a picture of it because I'm going to have my retainers fitted later today. They have this poster up on the wall, right? And that kind of thing just disgusts me, and it really, really disgusts me, because it's these people who are putting forward this notion that you are not good that you don't look good unless you conform to this particular ideal, this mathematical ideal, right? This symmetrical whatever. Unless you look like this, this is beauty, right? You're not beauty. This is beauty. You have to be like this. When it's completely the opposite. It's completely the opposite. Humanity is beauty. Truth is beauty. And this is a subversion of truth. This is taking you further away. So I suppose if anyone's on the fence here, this is what I want to say, is don't be convinced by people who tell you have to look a certain way in order to be beautiful. It's tripe. It is your humanity that counts. If you have an evil soul, if you are corrupt, if you do bad things, it doesn't matter how beautiful you look, or how beautiful you think or are told you look, or however beautiful some people say you look. It is your humanity that matters. And if you have a corrupt humanity, if you are a bad person, then that is the thing that matters. So that's why I find it so disgusting, is these people who say that it's all about looks. It's taking the human soul and throwing it in the dustbin and saying this doesn't matter. And so that I suppose is the I can't believe I missed that one out. Actually, this is probably the point I feel most passionately about, and the thing that really angers me so much is these people who will claim it's all about aesthetics, and it isn't. So there we are. I had to get that in the end though, because I thought it's such a central point. I can't believe I missed it out. But anyway, now it's in the video. There is going to be a cut, which is unfortunate, but there we are. That's the end. Thank you.